Would you rather have a person who comes to your house each day give you a gift from the heart, or a person who is obligated to do so? Which one of those circumstances should a marriage be based on? In the last chapter, I quoted founding father John Adams, who said, and I'm paraphrasing, a nation or a person could be enslaved, or let me say euphemistically, controlled by debt. My ex-wife had my love, but did not want it. She made that clear. She wanted my servitude. She wished to impose that servitude upon me with obligation. She did not appreciate that my care of her was from love, because she had none to return. As soon as she bore a child, I began to hear about obligations. I was always fascinated that she acknowledged my financial obligation to my children, but denied one of her own. As far as Stacy was concerned, those obligations were all that was left of marriage for me. The trouble was, I was still full of love. Chapter 2 of Hotsy Totsy FemiNazi is called Control. American people were free in a way that is incomprehensible today. There were so few laws that if you wanted to go to a place to make your fortune, you could. There was no king to rule over people as there was everywhere else in the world. Governments were local and very limited in their ability to control the unrestricted ambitions of people. Free trade was the order of the day, and that freedom facilitated rampant economic growth. In life, there are people who produce and people who connive ways to steal that production. Those people are bureaucrats, agents, accountants, lawyers, and magistrates. I indict these people because, in many cases, they impose their services upon you whether you want them or not. It's usually done in a way that makes their world so difficult to navigate that you're somehow glad to have them help you. The complexity is a construction. They do not help you. They take advantage of you. Growing up back east, there was constant referral to organized crime. A friend of mine summed up organized crime this way: they're not smart enough to be productive, but they are tough enough to steal from people who are. I imagined as a teenager that over the next few decades, I would see organized crime stamped out. The naivete of my youth had me believing that it was the job of the President of the United States and every protector right down to the local cop to protect me from crime in any of its forms. As a man who wished to live under the freedom of the American Constitution, I find it difficult to feel good about interlopers who, uninvited, wheedle their way into my business. In short, criminals. I also find it difficult to understand people who support this kind of oppression. I understand the services of accountants, lawyers, realtors, publicists, etc., but to have a society trained to have a knee-jerk need to hire them when they are not at all necessary has been a constant source of disturbance for me. Along those lines, paying to park a car is another one of the gripes of mine in the same vein. If you want me to patronize your business, for heaven's sakes, provide a place for me to park. Don't shake me down for 10 or 20 bucks. If that's your nickel and dime business plan, don't expect to see me. New York City literally has an entrance fee. You must pay a toll to enter. I doubt that I will ever willingly go there again. I always find paying to park to go to court to be especially mercenary. A court that may compel you to visit and then doesn't give you a place to leave your car while you're there is a display of pure disrespect. A city that plans for a courthouse but does not plan to provide parking without a toll is equally guilty of the same disrespect. Lately, there has emerged a business of licensed entertainment ticket scalping. It used to be that if you wanted a ticket to a concert or a ball game, the ticket had a price, and that was the price you paid. Now, in addition to the ticket, you pay a fee to an agent who sells the ticket to you. What the? This scalping was actually a crime when I was growing up. Now people have allowed it to not only be legal, but totally acceptable and expected. I guess people like it. I don't understand why. I resent it. As a young adult, I had a wife and children to support. I wanted to do that with car repair business. Fixing cars in my community seemed like a reasonable trade of goods and services that would make me financially stable and would be an asset to my town and ultimately to my country. My intention was to live a decent, legitimate life of a businessman. The plan was simple. Rent a building and pay rent and utilities. Buy tools and equipment to repair cars. Buy materials to repair cars. Exchange money for car repair. Employ other workers and share that money with them. And take the rest of the money home for my family. When a fire inspector came to my shop, I understood the concern. As it turned out, I had more than complied with the town's requirements in regard to fire prevention. But then a funny thing happened. I was called to meet with the town council. I sat with my folder on my lap on an isolated chair in a room facing 10 or 12 people at a table about 15 feet away. Each person asked me a question about my business. Did you pass the fire inspection? I told them that the certificate was on file with the town. He acknowledged that. Was I creating wastewater runoff? I said no. On and on the questions went. Finally, the last man, who I believe was a dentist, asked me in English, broken by a Middle Eastern accent, the materials that you use, are they flammable? I said yes, and reiterated that the fire inspector, a sincerely nice old guy who had a son-in-law with a fire extinguisher company, had been to my place and had given me a gold star. The man then asked me to submit a list of all the chemicals in my shop to him. I complied, and about a week later was informed that I needed to put a shower in my shop. I asked why. I was told that one of the materials that I used had a warning on it that if you became immersed in it, you should take a shower immediately. I informed the man that I bought the stuff in a pint can. He told me that he understood, and the following week, I was informed that I needed to install an eye wash station. Guess what? I already had one. I also had an accountant. This man was of absolutely no use to me. He did nothing to help me in achieving my goal of supporting my family. He was nothing more than a bill collector for the government, who, for some reason, I paid. I had no problem with paying my taxes, my rent, my workers, or my material bills, but I resented paying him. He was extraneous personnel. He served no function on behalf of my business. In fact, when I eventually had a misunderstanding with the state franchise tax board, I had to deal with it myself. They insisted that I owed $6,000. I literally took my papers to the state capitol and went over them with an agent. As it turned out, I was correct in my assertion that I had properly paid my taxes, but the agent was thrilled to find an arithmetic error in their favor for about $300. I paid it on the spot, got a receipt, and drove back to work. The insurance companies had a stranglehold on the car repair labor rate. They set the rate, and if you didn't like it, you didn't need to work with them. I must say that I have mixed feelings about this, but that's an issue for another time. I dealt with it. After a time, the insurance companies embraced computers. You needed to buy an expensive machine and learn how to use it. It had nothing to do with car repair. Remember my business plan. Fix cars, get paid. I resented the imposition of the computer. But that wasn't the worst part. The insurance companies demanded the use of computer software that you had to rent for over $1,000 a month. If you were one day late with the ransom, your software would literally be turned off on the first of the month. They were very serious. I asked if the labor rate would be increased to offset the cost of the computer and the software. I was told, no. I closed my business. An interesting side note of the insurance company story is that with the computer, insurance fraud was made push-button simple. Since no agent came to your shop in person, doctored photos, sent in the case of one company to Dallas, Texas, meant that you could get away with murder. I ran my company on the up and up, but when I moved to work for someone else, we were compelled to cheat to eat. Too bad. All through my 20-year car repair career, I saw very little exploitation of customers. In fact, in most cases, your customers were your friends. In my world, you went the extra mile for your customers and were proud to do so. My goals and efforts were completely sincere, but life was not getting better, as I had imagined it should. Life was getting worse. Why were people allowing it? I felt betrayed. I could see degeneration all around me, but at the time, I was physically ill and under control by financial obligations. I had to take my medications, put my head down, and work. That was chapter 2. I'll be back soon with chapter 3. It's a chapter that I find quite amusing. I'm Fred Satilli. Thanks for listening.